that we never left Source. We are right this second with Source. And so we're just waking up. And that's home. Source is our home. And so that's what they want to go back to home.
Hello, everyone. This is Holly Hall from The Intelligent Soul, and we have Lynn K. Russell. This is so exciting because it's not just about an NDE. You know, we've had a series of NDEs here. This is a researcher of NDEs, over 2,500 she researched. And we're going to talk about the details of how an MD asked her to research these NDEs and write a book about it. And that book is Beyond NDEs. She also wrote a children's book, which is amazing. It's more about spirituality and mindfulness and kindness, and that's called Worpple. Welcome, Lynn K. Russell. Welcome, Lynn, to the show.
Oh, thank you. I love being here. So that's great. Thank you for asking me.
You're quite welcome. So I've got a ton of questions. I read her book. You guys got to go on Amazon and catch it. What I love about the book is it's such an easy read because you're literally reading just paragraphs of each, not 2,500, but many of the ones that stood out for you, I guess, of the NDEs. And you're not just reading, you're reading a bit of a detail of what happened, like how they passed, but most of it is what is their experience when they were on the other side. And everyone has a similarity, but there was a few that stood out for me, which I do want to mention as we go forward. But one of the questions that I had was that, you know, you're working with was it Dr. Jeff Long, MD, from the Near Death Experience Research Foundation?
Yes.
And he had asked you to go over all of these. Now, where is this research foundation?
I'm sorry.
Where is this located?
Oh, it's online.
Oh, okay.
It's under NDERF.
Yes,
So
NDER.
just the initials. Yeah.
Because many of you know, like I'm Canadian, and this is a fellow Canadian too, except we're on the opposite sides of the of the country. Liked is one of the sayings that you has said that the closer to the light, uh, the drop of water to the is like a drop of water to the ocean, or the hydrogen molecules to the air, that we are that close to the light, but we don't recognize it in our human form. And that's what I like about these NDE experiences, because it gives you a reminder and a glimpse into they have experienced as well. So one of my questions is Debbie Sue, who had a suicide uh attempt, because she did cross over, but she came back. But what I liked that you had written in your book is that I saw as terrible pain, shame, grief, and lack of love on the earth no longer hurt me. They had no effect on me, and I felt only joy. This is amazing. Now, I don't want this to make people think like maybe I should go then, because you had said that you're just going to come back and live the same life again. So get
Yeah.
it right this time. Come back.
You
Obviously, she's
don't.
come back to tell the story, and she's happy to have come back.
Yeah. But you don't get out of whatever it is that you're trying to avoid. You still have to face that. So, yeah.
Now, I was surprised too that Dr. Jeffrey Long had discovered that only 17% of deaths results in NDEs. That's a pretty small amount,
Yeah, it is.
you
And
know.
we don't understand why. Maybe some will have an experience and not remember them. This is,
True, like a
it's,
dream.
yeah, because a lot of stuff is removed from our consciousness. After, like, when they come back, they lose quite a bit. So they may also not remember their experience. And some people remember their experience years later.
I could
Oh,
see
that's
that.
right. Yeah, yeah. So that does happen as well. And another thing is that um, now this is my thinking, not anything to do with what I've researched, but I'm wondering if it's people who are more psychic or more aware. like the
Yeah.
percentage of the population that is more open. Because one of the things that is asked is whether they have psychic abilities when they come back, and they do. That's pretty common, but they will almost all say, "But I already had some. I already was on the psychic scale,
Mm.
before that." So I wonder if it's people who are more psychic and more aware that
Yep.
have,
Or
yeah,
very empathic, maybe very empathic as well.
yes,
Uh,
yes,
I do have a lot of clients, my husband's included because my husband had an NDE experience as well, but he'll tell you he's the furthest from being psychic, but he is extremely empathic. Like if you tell him a sad story and it's your sad story and you're not even upset about it, he'll start crying. He gets up, he feels that the feeling that the other
yeah.
person may be on the inside, but not sharing it on the outside. So
So
really an amazing one that I thought was a little funny as well, a little bit comical was Stella because
oh,
she had a near death experience, but she remembers herself in the ambulance. Was it?
yeah.
And the
Oh,
ambulance got lost.
she was above the ambulance. Well, yeah, part of her was above and part of her was in. She wasn't in her body though. She was
No,
outside of her body.
no, she was upset. She was happy that the ambulance got lost because she was gone and she didn't want to come back.
She didn't want to be back here. Yeah.
I thought that was funny. She's
No,
like,
she
yay,
was a
she was
child.
overjoyed. Yay, you're lost. Keep getting lost. But she came back. And one of the ones that really struck me was I'm trying to see whose name it was, but you're going to remember, was the one that ended up in the morgue.
Okay, there's quite a few that have ended up in the morgue.
This one was
But
like 3 days. Like it was like ridiculous amount of
oh,
time.
that is George. Um,
Yes.
Rodnatis or Nadia, or I can't say his full name, but yes, George was in Russia. He was a Russian, and
Yes.
he Rodnaeus, that's how you say his name, and he was hit by a car, and he got killed right away. It's instant death, and so they put his body in the morgue, and they were going to do an autopsy,
Yeah.
and he came back into his body at the moment that they cut in to
Yeah.
his bang, he came back. Yeah, 3 days. So then after that, he was already a PhD in something, I don't remember what, but he went on to take a PhD in theology, and then he moved to the States and became a priest or a minister or whatever.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's right. And then he continued being a minister,
yeah,
moving forward till
yes,
I think he's passed now, though, isn't he now?
yes, yes, he's gone. Yeah.
Yeah.
His
And
story is on his story is still on the web.
great. I want to digress because you had, even though you didn't have any NDE experiences, you had sort of out of body or alternative existence. And one was you being one with a tree. Do you want to, and the birds, do you want to share that?
Yeah, do you want me to share all of it or just
Yeah,
okay?
yeah, all of it because they're very fat. You had three, right? Alternate
Yeah,
reality experiences.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, the first one, I was washing the dishes, and above the sink was a window, and I could see into the backyard, and I could see an apple tree, but I wasn't paying attention to any of that. I don't even know what I was thinking about. And all of a sudden, it was as if my consciousness was taken over. And that I was aware of the tree, um, and that I was the tree. It wasn't I was going to like the tree or that I became literally the tree, and the tree was me. There was no separation between us. And then I was whatever other kind of life form. I was the bird in the tree. I was the bug the bird was going to eat. I was every fish, flying things, crawling things. It didn't matter what shape they took. I became it.
Great.
And and that only
Wow.
lasted maybe 30 seconds.
Yeah.
It wasn't very
30
long.
seconds.
Yeah, I don't think it was
Wow.
very long. Yeah, it was just enough to get me that information. And then I was back doing the dishes again. And
Was there any feelings? Like, how did you feel like
oh,
that?
cool. I thought, oh, wow, that's cool. You know, I never, I mean, I had spent most of my life studying different religions and spiritual philosophies too. And so, but I had never heard of that. I hadn't read Cosmic Consciousness, yeah, although it was published at that time. I didn't know about it. But it was fascinating just to be able to be and connected to that
Yeah.
other life forms. Yeah, that was cool. So then the next experience, um, I was all of these experiences happened in the middle of the afternoon when the kids were quiet. They were at school or laying down having an afternoon nap. So this time I'm washing fingerprints off the hall walls, and I'm just spot washing, and and all of a sudden I'm not seeing the wall anymore. I'm seeing an atom, and with the nuclei and the electrons going around, and then that expanded to our solar system, the sun and the planets, and then that expanded to the galaxy, and the nuclei of the galaxy, which turns out to be a black hole. I didn't know that then, and how it's going around. And while I was having that micro to macro universe experience, I was getting information. And the information just told me that this wasn't an accident, that there was order and planning behind all of this. And
The
so that,
universe.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and an intelligence. Um, and so I thought that was cool. But then I heard words in my ear. And well, no, it wasn't in my ear. It was more of a knowing. It was like,
Right.
and it was such a strong knowing that I couldn't deny it, even though I
Right.
wanted to because I didn't like it. And that was that my being was intricately connected with the operation of the universe. And that scared me. I didn't like that one at all. And so that was the end of the experience. It stopped right then. Um, but it sort of scared me because I thought, well, what did they mean? My being is, I didn't understand. And I thought it meant that I had some thing to do that I was absolutely sure I was going to mess up. So I didn't want to even chance it.
Well, you were raised atheist, right?
Yes, 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 yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So there's a few times that it sounds like your belief system was greatly challenged. And then you became very interested in a whole bunch of different religions as well. And then you became interested in astrophysics.
Yeah, actually, where that started was that I was frightened of death and I wanted to know what happened at death. And my mother, being an atheist, said that I would disappear. And that frightened me. I was an 8-year-old. And so very
Yeah.
soon after that, I started to become curious about religions. And in my teens, I began studying them in earnest. And then that was back in the 50s. And there wasn't anything other than religions in those days. And then in the 60s and 70s, when the newer way of seeing things and the, spiritual, not religious, came into being, then I hopped on that because that fit better for me than these religions. I kept through it.
Hmm.
I couldn't take the dogma. Anyway,
Right. Less
so
dogmatic belief systems.
yeah, yeah. So that was why and so now it's 70 years that I've been researching different religions and still when something comes up that I don't know about, I'm on it. I want to know about it.
Oh, good for you.
There, a few days after the wall experience, I was in my living room and I was just picking up toys and things, tidying up, and and I could feel this presence in the room with me. And I didn't, it really was like, what's going on here? You know, but it was, I could feel this huge pile of love that was just not only wrapped around me, but entering right into me, you know. And I'd never felt love like that before. It was just, I couldn't describe it. And so that was cool. And then I felt like I was connected somehow. I didn't see a silver thread or any of those things. I just felt that somehow I was connected to this something. And then I
Mhm.
heard words, and this time I did hear words, and the words said, "This is where you came from, and this is where you will return." And what I liked about that was that it was for all of us. That I got the message, but
Yeah.
I knew that that was every one of us. That that's where we return.
So I would think you weren't scared anymore after that.
Yeah, that took care of my, well, for the most part. I must confess that after that, I still had lingering doubts because it was just the one experience and then it was gone. And, you know, a few years later, I'm saying, did that really happen? It
Did it
did really.
happen? Was I dreaming?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. I
That's
started to
amazing.
question myself.
I'd like to have just one of those. Especially the one where I have had moments where I feel one with the trees and nature and whatnot, like very profound, like I'm no different than them, they're no different than me, but not really like I'm the tree. I'm
Yeah,
not sure I've ever had that. I do believe I don't know,
I
when I
think,
walk in nature, I get lots of answers. So whether it's the trees or, but I get lots
yeah,
of,
some people say that nature is their church.
oh yeah,
I think that those experiences, I think when I put them all together eventually, I think they were talking about oneness. And
yes.
and that is the bottom line. That's what my book is really about, is that how connected we are and how magnificent we are because we are source. And how can you tell me that source is not magnificent? And
Yeah.
we can
And
create way more than we are. We can accomplish so much more than we are doing. It,
you
yeah,
know what? You're right. And you know that you come from a generation that you've seen so many changes. Like even you were birthed into a generation that was quite war torn in different parts of the world and may have experienced your parents witnessing that, whatnot. But then things have changed so drastically where, kids used to just run around and play with the neighbors all day long, barely come home for dinner and leave again. And now they're like, they're so with technology, you can't get kids out of the house
yeah,
at a
yeah.
certain age. So you
Oh yeah,
must have
things
really
have
seen a
changed
big
big time.
difference. What's
Yeah,
that?
I said things have changed big time. Yeah, well, I was born in 1938, so I remember the Second World War.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you would. So how would you say things have changed? I'm going to be a little off topic here, but how do you think things are better or worse?
In some areas, they're better, and some they're worse. Um, they're better from the point of view that we're more open. There were too many restrictions, especially for females. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
women couldn't buy a house or have a bank
Couldn't even
account.
get a job.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they could when I was in my lifetime. They could. My mother worked all the time, so yeah. But they couldn't have their own bank account, and they
Yeah.
couldn't buy a house or
Couldn't get a
anything
credit card
with
without their
another
husband's
man.
signature.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, my mother, in my mother's lifetime, women got the vote. They weren't even allowed to vote.
No, not till the 1930s when they
Yeah,
protested.
yeah. So
I
so
know.
I actually came shortly after that, you know. So life has changed. The part that isn't so good is the drugs because that came in with the boomers and and I think also stability, because the boomers took off and did their own thing around the world. And they didn't, like, before that, there was no, believe it or not, there were no teenagers. Teenagers didn't exist. They were,
They
they
just
just,
became adults.
No, they were children until they married and went on their own, or were 21. At 21, you turned into an adult. But there was nothing in between. And it wasn't until the boomers came along that teenage years came. So I'm, of course, was gone by that time and married by that time. So that these young people, these teens, took off around the world and did their own thing. But they didn't have that finished, they didn't get finished being raised.
Hmm.
They left home too soon and they
Hmm.
didn't have that stability. So
Hmm.
then when they married, they didn't know how to give it because they
Hmm.
didn't finish. So
And
that's about the only major
and
things.
often they would move far away from where they live, so they don't really have the family
Yeah.
support or teachings.
Yeah.
They just go and they still do that. They move out and they think they got it all figured out. But yeah, that's really interesting. One of the things that really stood out for me is when I was reading this is that when you become an NDE, some people had life reviews and some people didn't. But what was common, you said, is that there's no punishment.
No, absolutely no punishment. No. And going back to my other statement about oneness, that's like asking your toe to punish your finger. I mean, like, it's all the same thing. We are source, and so source can't punish itself. you
It's
know,
true. Although I think yeah, as humans we can punish ourselves, that's for sure. But no, you're right. Why would you make a mistake?
yeah,
You're
exactly.
not going to be your judge, your jury, and the perpetrator at the
Yeah,
same time, right?
that's right. Yeah, exactly.
I found that really interesting. I like that because well, some people did. What I've heard a lot with NDEs is that they will feel the pain that they have given other people,
Mhm.
and how that might you something you've done could hurt them. I would I'm kind of afraid of that. I'm like, oh my gosh, because I try so hard not to hurt people, but you still do. You can't help
Yeah,
it. Everybody's got their
yeah,
own agenda and their own perspective and everything. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna really get hammered on that one when I pass on. I don't want to
yeah,
feel all that.
yeah.
Guilt, I'll feel guilty. But then, as you say, when you go into spirit form, you don't have all those human guilt, remorse, anger.
Well, yes, actually, they do.
Oh,
Often people will, when they're in when they're having their life review, really feel bad, like really bad, and start to get angry with themselves or blame themselves, and they're just told it's okay, it's just learning experiences. That's it. And and while we're having those experiences, yes, we have to take consequences of our actions. So imagine somebody like Hitler, or even what's happening in Israel, right, or Russia
mhm.
and Ukraine. I mean, like, I can't even want to think about the life review that those people are going to
They're
have.
going to be there a while.
Yeah, so they do have to face the consequences of their actions, but during it all, they are surrounded by love. Now, there's another thing I want to mention, and that is that, as we know, people go up through the tunnel. Other ways too. There's other ways of getting to their destination of in heaven or whatever you want to call it. Um,
Mhm.
but on the way there, they often run across other souls who are stuck. They don't allow themselves to go to the light.
Oh,
And the reason is because they don't think they're worthy. And
oh,
I wonder if they are the souls who have done serious damage. I don't know.
oh, that's a good. And I agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm almost getting like I'm imagining a tunnel. I'm almost seeing their heart. Oh, let's stay in here. Yeah, they don't want to go through that review.
Yeah. Another thing people see now, I've mentioned this with suicide, that one of the options that happens is that they have to go into this place and wander back and forth and back and forth and back and forth to um, to relive and come to a conclusion of how they would deal with that situation that brought about their suicide without killing themselves. Okay, so that's what the back and forth. But some people, I'm wondering if those people in that pit, I'm calling a pit,
Mhm.
are people like the Hitlers and the Assads and the, you know,
Ah,
people.
so so they're reborn with their guilt, with their not really wanting to be in
Well,
amongst
having to relive
society.
life and find other ways to deal with things.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. And well, now that it's so common, suicide, and it's so well advertised, I mean, because of social media and news and everything. I mean, in the 30s and the 40s, maybe you might know one person, but now we know everybody in the world who's done it, to a degree. And I think it's become much more, an easy idea to check
Yeah,
out where maybe
yeah,
it wasn't before, I thought,
yeah,
because
yeah.
you weren't really
Yeah, I think
bombarded by
that's
it,
true. Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, and
unfortunately.
especially there's
Yeah.
two times when people commit suicide most often, actually three, but the first one is during teen years. And
Yeah.
and it's when they're discouraged or well, we know about being embarrassed online and we know about, not getting along with their peers and being beat up and things like that. So we know about those kind of the teen years are pretty rough sometimes. And they've gotten much, much more difficult than they were, back in my years. Like there was just this would be shocking. As a matter of fact, I think some of the things that I hear about that go on now in
Teens.
school, they would be arrested and charged back in my time, but they're not. It's just the way it is now. Anyway, so that makes it very difficult. So the teen years, and particularly those of the minority groups, so the indigenous peoples and the blacks particularly, because they don't see a hope for their future in their
Right.
teen years, and so that's one of the other people that create suicide. The other ones, there's a blip in the middle years when, and mostly men, and it's because they look at their life, they had goals and dreams, and they're not going to get them, and they know it now. And they're 50 and they can give the last kick at the cat if they want, but they're not, they know that it's not going to happen. And so then they don't, if they don't feel like they
Check
have
out.
anything to
Yeah.
live. So that's one of the other things. And then when people are elderly, like my age, when they're in their 80s and 90s, even
Oh,
70, yeah, they
I have
they,
not
they
heard
figure
of
that
that. I've
well,
not heard of that.
yeah,
You had mentioned the indigenous in there, and in your book you had mentioned that in North America, death has been treated as unnatural, as an invader, an enemy,
yeah,
to be conquered. But in other countries, that's not the case, or in other maybe in indigenous
yeah,
cultures,
yeah,
it's not the case.
that's right. That's right. In the olden days, when a person died, they were viewed in the home, and
True.
until the parlors came along, they were and people came to the home and viewed the body and the funeral and all of that. But it was very open. Death was something that even children saw,
Hmm.
whereas in North America, it's hidden. We don't
Hmm.
see death. I mean, we do see, and even cremation takes the view of the deceased away. So
Hmm.
we don't view the body.
It's
So
not always I mean, we do. Some people have celebrations of life. Uh,
yeah, they do. Yep, but they don't physically see the body, and that brings it home. I've got a story in my book about. I think it's in that book about when I was a teenager. I was a hairdresser, and I was looking for work, and I didn't have any, and I needed money. So I very bravely called up a funeral pyre and told them I would do the hair of the deceased. And they jumped at it. They thought this was fabulous. And so that's what I did. But I'd never seen a dead body before. And when I walked into the room with my very first dead body, it was such a shock because that woman was a mannequin. There was nobody home. It was like, really. And that blew me away because, and at that instant, I knew that I had found the soul, the spirit that lives within us. And that's
So,
another thing I want to mention. The soul with we don't have an oversoul. We don't have a higher being. We are soul. Soul is inside this body, operating this body, feeling and going to work and doing all the things that we do. It's soul that's doing that. And it's soul that's experiencing.
so when the NDEs cross over, they they're bigger than their human self. They're their soul self. They have this knowing. There was some in your book that said all of a sudden they just knew everything. They
Yeah.
understood everything. They had the knowledge of everything. Would that kind of be our higher self? That there's a part of us trapped in this body that knows everything?
The only higher self is source.
Okay.
As a matter of
Which we
fact,
are.
yes, which we are. But beyond that, we never left source. We are at this exact moment with source. We're there. And this is a dream or an illusion. This world is an illusion. And that's been said, being said repeatedly over and over and over by different people that have death experiences, or the near-death experiences. They say that this is not real. This is almost like a phony kind of life, when they come back. Um, but that's it's because this is actually a dream. This is a daydream, you can say, even. But
Yeah, I think a lot of people will be going, that's a dream I don't want to have again. That's um and with that being said, that's a great segue because you'd also said in your book that a lot of NDEs come back and they go into a depression because they get homesick.
yes, they want to be home. Yeah. And that's the other thing. There's two other things I want to mention about that is number one, when they cross over, all their awareness is brighter. That's what you're talking about being bigger. They don't
Yeah.
personally become bigger. Well, they do because they become source. But and source is the universe. So um, but they don't their consciousness, their awareness is opens up, and like it's everything is bigger and sharper and clearer and brighter, and yeah, so colors are brighter, music is stronger, everything is better there. And so they get all this knowledge, and that's right, that's what happens. And it's with all that, and that's what I'm saying about that we never left source. We are right this second with source, and so we're just waking up, and that's home. Source is our home. And so that's what they want to go back to home. Yeah, they
Do they
don't want to be.
eventually get out of the depression and realize, well, I'm here. There's
Oh,
a
yeah,
reason I
yeah,
came back. What am I supposed to do for the most
yeah,
part?
yeah, yeah, pretty much. Yeah, they do. Yeah. Many people don't know what they're supposed to do, even when they come back, because they would get it over with and kill themselves. And that's not how it works. So they won't be told. They're just not told why you'll know when the time comes. And so,
That's really interesting. What is your favorite story in the book? Who?
well, I love, and I mentioned this in the last interview, was I love Mellon Thomas Benedict. And so I very strongly suggest anybody reading Mellon Thomas Benedict's report because it's amazing. Um, and so I want to tell you a little bit about his. He
Yeah, just give us a little
died.
sneak peek.
Yeah, he died from cancer, and he was very bitter and angry and did not like people at all. He thought people were the scourge of the earth. And so when he died, he's on the way through the tunnel, I guess. I don't remember. But anyway, he's on his way to wherever he's going. And he says, "Wait, stop. I want to think about this." And everything stopped. So the fact that everything stops, that's very significant because he was having control. He's the one who was creating the experience. And that's why there's such a very wide variety of the kind of experiences that people have because we create our own. So anyway, Mellon Thomas keeps going, and he says to, he doesn't know who, but he says to the universe, I want to understand this is all about. So what, take me to the very beginning. And so he goes back to the beginning of our universe and watches the universe being created. Now, he's not the only one. There are quite a few other ones that go to the beginning of the universe and watch the universe getting
So
created.
he sees a big bang. He sees the creation
Yeah,
of.
yeah. The Big Bang, yes. So it's a big inflation actually, like a blowing up of a balloon rather than a blast. Yeah. So anyway, so and so all the way through he goes through that, and then when he's back and he's ready to come back, and he's cured, by the way, of his cancer, no cancer, and he comes back, and before he comes back into the body, he says to his guides, "So human beings are not evil?" And the guide says, "There are no evil humans anywhere, and that our thoughts and our attitudes are what creates what we experience. And it has nothing to do with God. God did not make the wars or the abuses or
No.
the horrible. God had nothing to do with it. That was human choices."
Wow. Did any of them go on to writing their own books?
Oh, many, many, many,
Yeah, I
many,
bet.
many.
I bet. Now, through all of this and through your research in theology, you became, and you've been a therapist, right?
Yes, I was a family
For
counselor.
the family counselor for 30 years. And so
Yeah,
you wrote a book for kids about
yeah.
mindfulness and kindness. You want to tell us about that book?
Well, the
Warple.
book is about, yes, Worpple, Worpple. It's about a boy named Cam who is a little overweight, lives in a subsidized housing, and he's poor. And so the kids from the more wealthy homes um, make fun of him, and he's bullied quite a bit. And his dream is to become a football player so that he can get a scholarship to university and get out of this situation. And he's 13 years old, and he's getting a really negative attitude toward life. And he's also starting to hang around with some bad kids that, bad news. So um, so that's the background. And so he's doing his homework assignment, and he winds up through this homework assignment um, in another world called Warple. And Warple is filled with little creatures that I've brought. They're all my creatures. And so he learns life lessons that he can bring back with him to this world. So when he's in your Warple, there's an evil magician that comes into the world that's going to take over, and then it's going to come to Earth and take over here too. So he has to find a way to protect these warm, fuzzy little creatures that have never had a war, don't even know about it.
They're
And
innocent.
so he learns, Jessica teaches him about oneness, and that we're all connected. And and Wixer teaches him that anger bounces back at you, and so you might get mad, but it's going to come back at you. And the Stofleys teach him that that kindness and caring are contagious and spread out. So it's a really good thing to do. And Wixer, no, not Wixer, Sarlacc. Sarlacc teaches him, and Sarlacc is the wise old man. He teaches him about that love is the most powerful thing there is in the universe. But through all of this is adventures and experiences and situations that Cam gets himself in that he has to get out of, and funny situations and so on.
I love it. That should be in every school, every grade. Read it. And
And there,
anyone at
it's
any
on
age could
Amazon.
benefit from that. Did you write that after you did your research? Because it sounds like some of the teachings are in there.
I know it was before I started writing it before, but um, but I didn't write it. I and then I finally did write it, but it took me forever to get it online. Anyway, it's up now.
Well,
It's
good for
on.
you.
So
And that happens a lot. I've got a lot of clients that are authors, and I do coaching with them. I do astrology and all of this stuff with my clients. And a lot of them are authors, and some of them they can't write a book fast enough. Like it's done in a year, and it's like, when am I going to get my agent? When am I going to get my this? And other ones, it's like it's been 8 years. I'm still writing the same book. So I don't think there's a timeline for writing the book at all.
yeah,
I'm going
yeah.
to go back because I just have one last question before we wrap this up a bit. Is Ron. He said that in this life, we are emotionally and intellectually separate from our spiritual connection to source. Can you elaborate on that? Like what does that mean?
Well, because you and I don't at this in this body in this lifetime, we don't know that we're connected to source. We have no idea. We come here with amnesia, and so we have no idea about our reality and about the things that I'm talking about. And and so what we know is going to work and giving, raising kids and having families and all those kind of things. And but I have no idea what my neighbors are doing or what they're thinking or what they're feeling, or I have no idea.
Hmm.
And that's what I'm talking about when I talk about, is that
And should
we,
we
we
be
are
connected
separate.
in that way? Should we be connected? Should we be connected in that
I
way?
think, well, we can be. We can be through meditation primarily. Two ways. One is meditation, and the other one is out of body experiences. But I don't mean the spontaneous out of body experience where you go back right in. I mean people who've taught themselves to leave their body and astral project and go and have trips and do things. They also can have near death experience kind of experiences. So
Oh, so they can force themselves to have an out
they
of body
teach themselves,
experience.
they teach themselves how to leave their body, um, astral project or OBE or whatever what you want to call it, and then they go out when they want, like maybe at night or before bed or something like that, or in the afternoon when they lay down. If they get a chance, then they might leave their body, have a trip, and they can go to the other side. They can contact their source, um, their loved ones that have passed on. They can do that. They can talk to them and have conversations. They can talk to their guides. They can learn about the spiritual messages that I'm talking about. So those are the two ways: is deep meditation and astral projection.
How do they have you ever done that? The out of body experience?
No, no, I haven't,
No.
but I know about it.
I
I've done
can't,
a lot of research.
yeah, I've been fascinated by this gentleman. I can't pick up his name. I'll put it in the comments when I do, but he was interviewed by Regina Meredith, which is from Gaia TV, but it was on her own personal channel. And he does that quite often, the out of body experiences
Yeah,
and what
yeah,
he finds out. He said the first time it was scary and it wasn't easy, and then it gets easier and easier
yeah,
as the more that
yeah.
you do it. No drugs
And
involved, he said. He was very adamant about that. Oh, no drugs involved. I do this on my own.
yeah, there are places online that teach. The Monroe Institute is the most famous, and they
Oh,
teach you how to leave your body. Yeah. Anyway, the other
yeah.
person, you did ask me for two people or for people that had an impact with me, and the
Yeah.
other person was Hafur, Hafur. I love what
Yeah,
happened
he's
with.
near the end. His story's near the end. Yeah.
Yeah, she was
Sorry.
yeah, Hafur was I think she was having a baby, but I'm not sure what her reason what caused her death. But anyway, um she got so much learning. She was just a normal everyday housewife with nothing, like nothing spiritual or any of that. And the spiritual understanding that she gained in her death experience or her near death experience was phenomenal. So I do suggest, and she's very articulate and puts it all together nicely. So I do suggest just go to Google and you could put Hafur, Hafur, and then space NDE, and you'll get her.
Because she wrote a
Okay.
book too.
I don't know if she did, but her story's on there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I read that but
It
I don't know.
might,
There's so
she
many
might,
stories in your book. You can get them mixed up, but they all have amazing lessons.
yeah.
So, the last question, did you learn from anyone why we are here? I understand why we don't remember everything because that would be overwhelming for us to remember all of our lifetimes. I mean, that would be insane. But did
Yeah.
you learn why? Why do we do this earth thing?
Yes, yes, yes. Think about it this way. If you lived, and I mean you, put yourself in a black room, okay? Now, and with nothing, like literally nothing,
Hmm.
and you're floating. You're in this floating space with
Of nothing.
nothing around you, just blackness. That's it, period. How long would you be able to stay there? You're thinking,
Pretty
emoting.
boring.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like you'd be bored within that first half hour. And then what? But if that was eternity, you would have to start creating in order to experience. And so that's what happens with the source. The source would have nothing. Like there would be nothing but nothingness around. And so the source must create. There is no option but to create in order to know itself. And we create, we choose to create this existence as well as
I
many
love
others.
that. I just got a huge aha moment when you when you said that because I thought, you know what? In a sense, I'm not going to downplay anyone that was born into a horrible childhood. I'm not going to downplay that at all. I've had my challenges included. But if you think about it, we're doing this constantly as human beings. Like I create this set, I create this studio, I create what I'm going to wear, I create my hair, I create the glasses I want to wear, I create the home I want to live in, the vacations I want to
Yeah,
go
the
on, even the
attitude I want
job
to
that I'm going to
take.
take. I'm creating it all. So it kind of
Yes,
doesn't end, but now I get to see it in form. I get to, it's
yeah,
tangible.
yeah. Our thoughts are and our attitudes are vastly important. Like we don't even realize how important our thoughts are because that's what leads us to the life we live.
So daydream, everyone, daydream the nicest daydream ever and see if it ever starts to happen and manifest. But it's also our choices as well. I get a lot of people go, the law of attraction, it doesn't work for me. I sit there and say the same thing over and over. I'm abundant, I'm abundant, I'm abundant. And sometimes it has a lot more to do with just how much money you're going to get in
Yeah,
your,
yeah.
in your bank account tomorrow. It's a little more
Well,
complicated than
actually,
that.
with the abundance thing, or not abundance, but when you the affirmations, saying it over and over, affirmations don't work. You need to connect it to your reality, which is source. Then they have an effect.
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree. Thank you so much, Lynn, for being on the show. And everyone, if you want to get her books, all you basically have to do is just look up Lynn K. Russell. And you got to put the K in there, though, because there's lots of Lynn Russells. And you're going to find her. I'm going to put all the links below where you can get everything. And thank you so much for sharing your experience and having the patience to make sure that we got this all sorted out. I know everyone's going to benefit from all the work that you've done. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I love being here. The only last thing I want to leave people with is to know that they are magnificent and you are shortchanging yourself because you can create so much more than you are. And then you know
And
you can do.
and on your website, which is lynnKrussell.com, that is one of your quotes that you have right away is that you want everyone to know how amazing they are and how brilliant and wonderful they are. And hearing it from someone who's got such a history as you do, it means a lot. It's powerful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you for
Thank you
having
for
me. I've enjoyed being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, we'll probably have her back on again. And thank you, everyone. And thank you for listening. Take a look at all the links below. May all your dreams come true. Namaste.
Namaste.